you all right. Great. Let's see. I just hit it, told it to go live, so we should be live now. Good morning, everybody. If you can hear us, if you can see us online, please drop a little comment over on the side there so I know you're there. Give me just a moment while I get everything set up. I want to make sure that I'm able to see everybody and hear everybody. Let's see. Groups. Okay. Where are we at? Okay. Okay. Yay. Okay, I can see myself on there, so that's a good sign. And good. Okay. All right. So let's see. While everybody's logging on here, I just wanted to remind everybody that we are doing the Facebook Lives on your cat's in the background there. Every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And those are, boy, we've been doing pretty well on those. We keep trying out new technology and things like that. So are you typing right now, Cliff? I can hear little clicks in the background and it's not me. So 2. Okay, hopefully that won't be too bad. Good morning, Daniel. We have a couple of classes available for folks who might be interested in those. That would be the, right now what we've got going is we've got the Good Dog Level 1 Obedience course. So that's an online course. It's set up to last 6 weeks, but you've got, when you sign up for it, you've got a lifetime subscription. I have a Puppy Essentials class coming up this summer at the Lynn Benton Community College. Again, that's a online course that was scheduled to be 8 weeks long. And let me see what else. We have the exercise class enrollment, and that will be closing soon. And that's with Tracy James. I hear it's a lot of fun. I haven't been able to join yet, so I need to. That one's on Wednesday nights, and again, it's a Facebook group. Yay. If you want us to be able to see your name, go ahead and let StreamYard know who you are. I have another way of checking it, but it's just helpful. Yikes. Let me back out of that. Sorry. Got myself. Okay, good. Okay. So this morning, what do we have? We have our longtime Trainer Circle member, Cliff Earhart, and he's come on this journey with us. You've been one of our admins or trainers for 4 or 5 years now. It's been a long time.
I think about 6, to be honest with you.
Wow. So probably since we had about 5,000 members or something like that. So
3,000 actually.
What's that?
3,000.
Wow. We thought we were big then, and it's been a big change. So let's see, what can I say? Cliff has gotten multiple titles with multiple dogs, primarily in things like obedience, rally obedience. He's actually got a place finish in the nationals up in Canada. So really quite impressive. He is a crossover trainer. And for those of you who don't know what a crossover trainer is, a lot of the old style training, we used prongs. We didn't use shock collars back in the old days because we didn't really have them. But prongs and slip leads and things like that. And we forced the dogs to do what we told them to. And then we told them that they were good. And things have changed. That's a way oversimplification, but things have changed a lot. And with the advent of the positive training movement, And most of the trainers in our trainer circle are crossover trainers. Most of us have experience with these tools and with these other methods, and for various reasons have decided to switch over. And Cliff is one of these. And so he's going to talk today about why he switched and the emotions that go along with the use of a prong or an e-collar. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to hop on. Give us drop a question down below. I'll be keeping an eye on the questions, and we should be here for just shy of 30 minutes from here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Cliff, and thank you so much, Cliff. I'm really looking forward to this.
All right, guys. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are and whatever time zone you're in. Living in Saskatchewan, you kind of take time zones for granted. But anyways, I'm here to talk a little bit about the use of dog training tools such as prong collars and e-collars. So very, very heavily weighted on the ones that are designed to create aversive stimulus. So anything that's kind of designed to be either annoying, uncomfortable, or possibly even painful for a dog. The one thing I do want to kind of frame this up right now is that when it comes to a topic like this, we really need to take the emotion out of it, because this is a highly emotionally charged topic. Because you'll have people on one side of the fence that strongly believe against the use of these tools, and they're very emotionally entrenched in those beliefs. And then on the other side of the fence, you also have groups of people who believe with strong emotion that there's nothing wrong with using these tools and they should be continued to be used. And once again, they're also emotionally entrenched in those views. So it's always important to be as open-minded as you can on topics like this. But anyways, before we get any further, I want to talk about a few examples. But before we do that, I just kind of also want to frame this up because I'll be referring back to how dogs learn, right? So on a very, very basic level, dogs learn through association, right? So if a dog completes a certain action, and then after that action, the dog gets something that the dog values, that the dog wants, and let's say this is repeated over time with some consistency, the dog's going to learn to associate that action with that outcome that he really wants and likes. So over time, the dog's going to learn. And that's, basically how positive reinforcement training works. Now, on the other side of the coin, let's say the dog completes a certain action, and after that, the dog gets something that he doesn't like or doesn't want. And if this is repeated over time with somewhat consistency, then the dog's soon going to learn every time it completes that action, something bad happens. So the dog's going to learn to avoid that behavior. That's how punishment-based approaches work. So keeping that in mind, I'd like to share a few examples from my past. First one is with one dog that my wife and I got not too long after we were married, a Black Lab Great Dane cross. And I swear, this dog had more energy than 10 dogs. The most energy I've ever seen in a dog to date. And of course, it had to be the first dog my wife and I got after we got married. But anyways, up until then, I just had dogs living on the farm. And dog training really wasn't a thing back then, right? We just learned how to live together as we went along. I don't even think dog trainers existed back then, or at least I didn't know about it. So anyways, living in the big city now, I know people are less tolerant of bad behavior. So my wife and I figured we better, get some training for this dog. And we did what everyone did back then, is we opened up the phone book, found the first dog trainer on the list, gave him a call and signed up for classes. And back then, as Caitlin said, it was very traditional based training. At least where we lived, the terms positive reinforcement, balance training, alpha theory, all that stuff didn't even exist back then. There was just an experienced trainer teaching you what they found to be effective. And back then it was punishment-based training techniques. So by the second class, we had our dog in a prong collar, and they were teaching us how to stop unwanted behavior by correcting it. So by using leash corrections with the prong collar. we finished the class and on we went using what we learned. One of the things I used to do with Bailey every once in a while was take him to an off-leash dog park, and he loved that, like you wouldn't believe. He would be running around and playing with every dog that would play with him, and he'd keep doing that. I don't think he would have stopped if we never left, to be honest with you. That dog probably just would have fell over from exhaustion if I let him. So I do that every once in a while, but mostly his activity came from me taking him for walks. So one thing that I noticed is we'd go out for walks and he'd see another dog, and then he'd start lunging and barking towards that dog. At the time, I didn't understand where this behavior was coming from, but hey, I knew how to stop it. So I'd do what I was taught to do. I'd give him a harsh correction on that prong collar with the leash. And if the behavior didn't stop that instant, he'd get another one and another one and another one. And then the behavior would stop. Now, I'm going along thinking, well, hey, look at this. I'm training my dog. Right on. But the one thing that happened over time was it took more and more corrections, it took harsher and harsher corrections for the behavior to stop. And the behavior didn't stop unless I corrected it. And I was getting to the point where, my wrist would get sore from correcting him.
Poor puppy.
So, well, yeah, at the time. But that kind of caught my attention as odd because it wasn't working the way the trainer said it would. So I was kind of curious about that. I didn't understand what was going on at the time, but I knew I had to do something. Another thing that I noticed was that Bailey was a lot more attached to my wife than he was to me. Not like he didn't hate me or anything, or he was scared of me. He'd still come up to me for love and affection. But man, you could notice there was a big difference in how he responded to my wife. And I thought that was rather odd because at the time, as I understood it, I'm alpha dog. He should be loving me best, right? So I was curious about that. And that's kind of what set me down the path of learning and kind of led to where I am today. Is that curiosity kind of drove me because it didn't seem right. The way Bailey was acting, the way he'd respond to me, something was off there, right? At the time, I didn't understand it.
Yeah, and it wasn't what your trainer was leading you to expect.
Yeah, not that they told us exactly what to expect, but we were expecting a nicely behaved dog at the end of that class, right? And it wasn't something that was implied. It's just what we were going for was our goal, right? And we just assumed going to a trainer, they're gonna get us to that goal, no problem.
Right.
Yeah. So the one thing I didn't realize at the time is how punishment works. So as I said before, dogs learn through association. So when Bailey would be looking at the dogs and starting to bark and lunge and just get all out of control, that was based on excitement. He was thinking, oh, great, I get to play with a dog. And he was getting all excited. And here I was correcting him. So Bailey was associating that negative outcome with the dogs.
Right.
So every time he'd see another dog, he'd think, oh, shit, something bad's going to happen. Right. And that's where it was coming from. Now, the other thing I didn't understand at the time is I'd give him that first correction. He'd associate that with the dogs. But the subsequent corrections, at least some of those, he associated them with me. So, and that would have been why he wasn't as trusting with me as he was with my wife. So
but every time he's around you, it's not very fun, right? It's kind of painful and yeah.
Now, briefly want to go over a different example. And that's one of my current dogs here, Strider. He's been with me about a year now, and he came to me from his first family with some pretty bad aggression problems towards other dogs.
Yeah, and let me just chip in here real quick. I think we've got a couple of videos of Strider on the 101DogSpots channel, and he's a lovely dog. It's so nice to watch you work with him. So just put that little, I'll put a link to the 101DogSpots YouTube channel out there.
Yeah, he's a great little dog. But anyways, he came to me with some serious aggression problems, and I started working on that with him. And, starting with engage, disengage approach. So very positive reinforcement-based approach.
Right.
So I was at the point of the training where I would take him out, expose him to other dogs, still at a distance he'd feel safe. And then every time he would give me focus, I'd mark and reward that. And if he started to act out, well, I wouldn't even respond to that. I'd just turn around and walk away with him, get him further away from the dogs so he'd feel safe. And then once again, he'd give me focus, mark and reward that. So I had some amazing progress with him early on, but then I hit a point, where I was just describing here, and it just seemed like the progress stopped. Couldn't figure that out, so I videotaped myself a couple of times. Turns out my timing was bad, and it was blatantly obvious to me. So I fixed my timing, and then he started to learn. But thinking back to that now, when my timing was off, Strider was just associating that reward with me. So I was earning his trust. We were building a really good, strong bond. And, it helped accelerate further training with him, right? Because there's that higher level of trust. Even though my timing was off and he wasn't really learning what I was trying to teach him, but at least we developed a stronger bond and more trust.
So he wasn't learning to trust the other dogs weren't going to hurt him, but he was learning to trust you and hey, we always have fun. We're always having a good time. Yeah, I've seen that happen a few times in training, for sure. And let me interrupt real quick because I think this might have a little bit of an effect on training. Strider is he's a German Shepherd, right?
Yeah, German Shepherd.
So, and can I ask real quick what was off on your timing?
I was marking rewarding too late.
Oh,
so
okay.
He would turn and focus at me, but then as I would go to mark and reward that, he was already switching and focusing on something else.
Okay, interesting.
Right? So
yeah,
could be a squirrel, a leaf, whatever, right? I wasn't quick to capture that behavior of him looking at me.
And were you using something like a clicker or were you using a verbal marker?
At first a verbal marker, but I had to switch to using a clicker because for me, for my style, that was easier for me to get better at timing.
Right, gotcha. Okay. So sorry for the interruption there.
No worries. But and the reason why I'm using those two examples is to kind of highlight the risks and to highlight where all the controversy comes in with using these kind of tools. So with Bailey, my timing was off, and it made him form a negative association with dogs he met and negative association with me. But with Strider, not using any of those tools, and my timing off, probably just as bad, because I do have horrible timing. No big deal. The only thing I was risking was a stronger bond with him, whereas with Bailey, I was risking a weaker bond and less trust. So, and that's really where the controversy comes in, because some people don't think of it in terms like that, and some people can't relate to that. But based on my firsthand experience, that's a real risk. You may not see it in terms of behavior problems. You may not see it in terms of injury or any other physical signs or behavioral signs, but there will be an effect there.
One of the things that we see a lot on the page, and it may not be obvious to the owners, is with prong use, we see a lot of redirect aggression in the household. So you're taking your dogs for a walk, you're taking them for a walk together, you're correcting them for being reactive, and then when you get home and that prong is off, they're redirecting onto the other dog. That's a fairly common storyline that we see. So yeah, negative associations may not just be with you, but maybe with anything else. They're superstitious behaviors. Yeah. So lovely point.
Two other examples I kind of want to briefly go over here too, and these were examples from classes that I've done, because I've been teaching classes now for about 6 years, various organizations in the city that I live in. But the one example that I do want to bring up is one that kind of caught me off guard. So it was just a basic manners class I was teaching, and the organization I was teaching this with was in the basement of a commercial building. So in order to get access, you had to, there was a door with a stairwell and a door at the bottom kind of thing. So this is the first class, haven't met any of the students yet. So I showed up about an hour early just to make sure, waiting for everyone to show up. And I think we had about 45 minutes to go to the start of the class. And I hear the door at the top open, so I'm thinking, right on, everyone's coming in. I'm getting all excited like I normally do for classes. And all of a sudden, I heard this commotion, and the door at the bottom flew open, and out came this St. Bernard dog, just running around, jumping, barking, just having the time of his life. So I grabbed his leash and kind of got him to calm down a bit. And then his owner came up to me, and this was an elderly lady. Probably, I think the dog weighed about 20 pounds more than her, to be honest with you. The dog was about 10 months old, around 150 pounds. And this lady came into owning this dog because his first owner passed away. She didn't want to see the dog go into the shelter, so she took this dog. And she had no idea about dog training. I think this was her first dog, if I remember correctly. But anyways, when I was talking to her, I noticed the dog had a prong collar on. So I just kind of, took note of that. Then I asked her, well, what's your goal? Well, what is it that you want to get out of this class? Tell me about your biggest obstacle right now that made you come here for help. And she started telling me that she didn't know how to control the dog. She had trouble controlling the dog. So, she did a little bit of reading, put this prong collar on. But she says, I haven't trained the dog, so I know I got to train it. I know I got to do something here. Please help. So I did. She finished the whole class. By the end of the class, we had her off the prong collar.
Nice. Yeah.
So, she was coming to me for help. I helped her. And one other example, kind of along the same lines here.
Let me stop you there. You didn't, she walked in the door. You didn't say, oh my God, we've got to get rid of this tool. This is the worst thing ever. You can't possibly use this. I mean, you've got an elderly lady with a giant dog and a very excitable adolescent giant dog.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but the place I was teaching at the time had a strict policy of not allowing those tools in the building.
Right. Wow.
But I wasn't exactly going to turn her away without helping.
Yeah.
So
good for you.
I allowed it because I knew by the end of the class, she wouldn't need it.
Right.
She was open-minded. Right. She wanted to learn. She was coming to me for help. How can you not win in that situation?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And you don't need to be, honestly, I recommended a prong collar once in my career, and it was an 80-year-old man who wanted to walk his adolescent lab on the street and didn't want to do any training. And it's like, I have nothing I can, there's to save a life, his life, the dog's life, and I understand that it's, it's maybe an appropriate thing on the very, very rarest of occasions.
So there's one other example too that I want to mention before I sum this part up. But I was teaching a rally obedience class, and this was at the novice level, so a competitive class. This lady signed up for this class, and on her first night, she showed up and she had a prong collar and an e-collar on her dog, both. And so once again, and this was a short-haired dog, so it stuck out, like a neon light. Right. So once again, I just asked her, well, what's your goals? What do you want to get out of this class? What's your biggest obstacle, that kind of thing. And she starts telling me about a sport that she wants to compete in with that dog, but they don't start training in that sport for another month. So she figured rally obedience would help her, get some transferable skills. And, she was right. So that was good. And I just leveraged off that. So I let her go through the course once that we had set up just to kind of see, how her and her dog interacted. And this dog was a ball of nervous energy. So he really wanted to work for his owner in the worst way. But he was always looking at her kind of sideways, looking up, kind of fearful of the next correction to come. Because he was learning something completely new, still wasn't too sure of the expectations, but he was getting the odd zap and the odd correction.
Right.
So I kind of thought about that. And then on the next class, I told her what I see in her dog, how he wants to work and how he's really focused on her. And I said, so let's see where your training really is at, and let's try this off leash. Because in the sport she eventually wanted to compete in, it's all done off leash anyways. So I told her, let's see where you're at. So she took the leash off, handed it to me, handed me the e-collar controller, and she went through the course, and she actually did better than she did the day before.
Nice.
So I got her doing off-leash work for the entire course. And in rally obedience at the novice level, it's all done on leash.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of related it to her end goal and showed her a way to get there without using those tools.
Right. Nice.
So in both cases, I mean, even though I don't like using those tools, I don't believe in those tools, it's not for me. I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm going to help them and show them a different way, a way where you don't need the tools, right? Because even with, like, if you think of the best trainer that you know, right? Someone who knows dog body language and can read a dog like a book, has impeccable timing, and understands dog behavior almost as much as their own behavior. You give them an e-collar to use, and then they're going to have a wonderfully trained dog at the end of it. But they're only going to need to use that e-collar 3 or 4 times during the whole dog's training. But if they're that good, I can guarantee you they're not going to use it at all, because why would you want to do that when you don't need it?
Yeah, there's a old saying, which I picked up in horse training. You know, if you're good enough to use spurs, you don't need them. It's absolutely true. I see it. You know, I've been training horses for 40 some years, and I just see it over and over again. It's like, you don't need those. You really, take those things off. You'll be better off without them. But it is a real, and I know most of our folks here on the DT 101 page, they don't want to hurt their dog. They don't want to cause pain or discomfort, but they don't know how to do it without it. So it's, you know, and it can be hard. It's really frustrating when you've got a dog running off down the street and, you know, you don't have a leash on it and you're like, I don't want him to get hit by the car. So, you know, it's really understandable from an emotional level. What's harder is once you start understanding, I think, the technology and the technical aspects, you realize what's going on with the dog, where you might be hamstringing your training.
Yeah, and then to add to that, you know, once you know better and once you do better, not reacting emotionally when you see other people at an earlier stage of their learning, perhaps using the tools.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's where that emotional conflict comes from that I mentioned right at the beginning. And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems in our industry right now, is that conflict on that specific topic alone. There's not enough people approaching this from an open-minded standpoint, and people just becoming more and more entrenched and less open-minded.
Yeah. And people not being kind about it too, not being, you know, understanding of the human half, for sure. And I know it's hard. We look at the dogs and we're like, oh, I just want to fix this. And sometimes you have to go a little slower.
Yeah.
So I know that I've interrupted you a lot. We're kind of coming towards the end of our time frame here. We'll probably go a few minutes over, but I want to make sure you have a chance to say, you know, what it is that you wanted to say here. So,
the biggest point I wanted to make is let's remain open-minded. One of the 2 best traits you can have as a dog trainer, whether you're doing it professionally or training your own dog, it doesn't matter. And this is something I learned from Caitlin. The 2 best qualities you can have is curiosity and compassion.
Yeah.
So always keep that in mind. And it kind of really aligns well with the positive reinforcement-based approach, because a positive reinforcement-based approach isn't about a detailed process, right? Click, treat, reward. It's not about that. It's about looking at things with curiosity and compassion and working through it. And you know, that applies to both ends of the leash, right? So if we really want to present ourselves as positive reinforcement-based trainers, whether it's professional or our own dogs, then we need to treat other people in the same way.
Yeah.
You know, when we're seeing the tools is when it's the toughest, right? Because you really want to jump in there and say something. But if you truly want to get that tool out of the hands of the trainer, then your best approach is to show them another way, without judgment, without you know, any harsh words, without, you know, doing anything that would make them feel defensive, and then close their mind to new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I wanted to, Cliff, it's just been a wonderful opportunity to talk with you and to have this chat again. I know that you have, you've been a big advocate on the page, and you've always jumped in to help out people who are struggling with tool usage, either using it or trying to get away from using it or anything like that. And we have benefited immensely from your knowledge and your skills. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more videos of you and Strider. I know you've been doing a lot of really great ones that I've seen a couple of the pre-publications. So looking forward to seeing more of those. And for everybody out there listening, we do have a couple of classes on offer right now. The obedience class, a puppy class, an exercise class. And I want to remind everybody that we have the trainer finder. So if you, Daniel just made a comment. He said he loves how you, Cliff, are teaching alternatives without the judgment, which makes the equipment superfluous. Absolutely. We have the trainer finder. We've got a bunch of trainers who are available for online consults. Cliff is one of those. If you want to get help with one of our trainers, please message us on the 101DogSpots page. I'll pop a link. I'm not sure how long this live will last after we're done. We're hoping we've got the technology to post it, but we may or may not. So we'll see what happens there. We'll publish at least a little bit of a summary. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us, and thanks so much, Cliff, for being willing to spend your Saturday morning with us. So,
anytime.
Absolutely. All right. Everybody have a great day. A thank you, Facebook user. I'll figure out who you are. We have a thank you, Cliff. Your non-judgmental way of approaching helping people is how I wish everyone would approach R+ training. Absolutely. Yeah. We could all do better with the human side. All righty. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye, Cliff.
Thanks, guys.
And the broadcast. All right.